the fuck is that? Oh, okay. Pig was out here earlier on the little deck I have here, and she had some couple corns on the cob with her, and I think she get them right now. Now they're all in the grout area of the little tiles here. Anyway, hey, welcome back, everyone, for our, what is this, our 4th episode of Finding America. If this is the first time here, I am the voice and creator of WorldAccordingtoBriggs. My name is Briggs. Like I've said in other ones, if this is your first time seeing me, probably shocked, I am an older gentleman. I'm not as young as most people think I am, but we've been through that before. 2 stories today I thought were very interesting. One, an update on Estelle from last week, and I'm going to tell you about Dennis, a man I met in Chicago doing some voiceover work back in 2018. So let's start off with Estelle. Good morning, by the way. Drinking tea today. I'm drinking Better Brand tea. I like it. It's like this lung stuff, helps clear up your throat and all that, which if you talk for a living and you get things in your throat, your nose, and you're not breathing right, it sucks. So I drink that. Seems to help. I hope it does. Maybe it's psychosomatic. Who knows? So let's start off with Estelle. So in the last video, I talked about this older woman I'd met on a train back in the early 90s named Estelle. We were taking the train from Los Angeles up to, I was going to Portland, she was going to Seattle. And it's an overnight train, and we were in coach, and we talked to each other and had a great time. A great conversation. Told me all about her life, everything else like that. But Estelle was a widower. Her husband had passed away in 1985, so this was probably 7 or 8 years after he had passed away. And she still had 2 sons. One son in Seattle had some grandkids, and she went up there as often as she could, and that's where she was going during this during this train trip. So I always wanted to find out what happened to her. It's been in my mind for, a couple decades now. And when I did that video last week, I happened to mention it. If, one of her kids or grandkids sees this, I'd love to find out what happened to Estelle. So her grandson did. His name is John, but he's actually Jack for short. And his dad was John and Jack for short. This is great. But everyone called his dad Billy. It's a great story. When his dad was younger, he'd taken karate. And his name was Jack. His birth name is John, but they called him Jack. And he'd taken karate. Well, there was a low-budget, great movie, but a low-budget movie back in the 1970s called Billy Jack. And his friends started calling him Billy Jack through elementary school and then middle school and then high school. And somewhere along that line, Billy stuck. So most people call him Billy. I mean, the family still calls him Dad or Jack, whatever, but most people call him Billy. I just thought that was a great story. But anyway, so I talked to her grandson, and he did tell me that, yes, she did pass away, and we kind of barely missed her. She passed away in late 2017. I'd confused a couple of the dates. I think I'd said she was born in 21 or something like that, but it was actually 31. So anyway, so yeah, she was still an older woman. I mean, 31 to the 90s. She had to be 64 when I met her. She made it all the way to, 2017. That's a pretty good run. So good for her. And the greatest thing was she was going back and forth because of the train. That's why she's on the train. She's going back and forth to Seattle to see her grandkids as often as she could. She loved it. He said probably not long after I took that train trip with her, she eventually moved, sold all their property they had down in the San Diego area, Carlsbad area, and or Vista, sorry, behind Carlsbad, and she moved up to Seattle. His dad had some property. They lived outside of Seattle. Dad had a little property where the house had a couple acres on it, and they built her a little house, and she lived out her days there. She passed away in her sleep in late, he said, actually it was like December 3rd, right around Pearl Harbor Day, December 3rd or 7th, something like that. In 2017, she passed away. And it was great. He told me all about her, and I didn't realize this. I just thought her husband, because her story starts out where she gets on a train, and they shipped her off to the Midwest, her and her brothers. And They, you know, because it was the Great Depression time and right before World War II, so families were starving, families were broke. Her dad had like disappeared at sea or something like that, and her mom just couldn't handle it. So they had a program where they're shipping kids off to the Midwest, work on the farm, go to school, get fed, grow up, hopefully happy. For the most part, she was kind of happy, but she did run away from the farm after her two new brothers had gone off. And yes, I was right. They did go off to World War II, and they both came back. So that's good. So she stayed in contact with them her whole life. Those were her brothers. And it wasn't until later on in life that she had made contact with her biological brothers who were on that train with her at the same time. Now, keep in mind, back in the day, you didn't have Facebook, and not everyone had a phone in a lot of cases. So they lost contact with each other. And it was years before they actually found each other. But at the end, her two adopted, let's call them adopted brothers, and her were always close, and then the two newer brothers were close until one of them passed away. I think the other one, I think they've all passed away now at this point. I didn't get that deep into it. But it was interesting. I just thought, because she said she ran away, came to San Diego, worked in the kitchen, met her husband, and I thought, that's it. She just started spitting out kids and had a happy life. She was an educated woman. I didn't realize that. She had some education. Her husband was a veterinarian. She said he was a vet. I thought she was referring to he was in the Marine Corps or something like that, which he was. I got that right too. I have a great memory, apparently. But he was a Marine Corps vet, and he had busted up his leg doing something for the Marine Corps, and they put him out. So he had a nice retirement, but he went to school. He became a veterinarian, and she had gone to school for something else and got her education. And they had some property in what is now Vista, California. Anyway, so she had moved up to Seattle with the grandkids and with her son and the whole family. She lived on the property till she passed away in 2017, which I was really glad. She eventually lived what she wanted to do, and later on in life is be around the grandkids. It's another movie reference. Apparently his family watched a lot of movies, is what I'm gathering. They called her Grandmama, even though most people called her Grandma or whatever, but they always call her Grandmama. And that was because they had watched The Addams Family, and they had Grandmama on there or something like that. So they just always called her Grandmama. But it was really nice to talk to him. Talked to him for over an hour. And yeah, Estelle never found out what happened to her mom or her dad. Her dad was like lost at sea or just never came back. He worked on some kind of shipping thing and went out on the boats and just never came back. So the family never knew what happened. She never found out. And her mom, she knows, remarried at some point, but she never heard from her mom again. And she looked for her, but she couldn't even find if she'd passed away. She thinks she may have passed away in Europe because the second man that she'd married was some European guy, so she may have passed away over there. I'm sure she's dead by now, and that was her mom. But yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting. It was very fortunate that he or someone told him about the video, and he watched the video last week, which, John, Jack, thanks, I appreciate it. A lot of people were emailing me and leaving comments about Estelle. And I thought it was great. It's neat. She found her America. She found her America a couple different times. She got shipped off to the Midwest where her new America was found for her, and she was forced to stay there. I don't think she had a terrible life there. She got two brothers out of it, which she was extremely close with. And yeah, the grandson shed some light on that. That Estelle apparently was a little plump thing when she was younger. People teased her at school. Well, her two brothers, adopted brothers, were two big farm boys that were kind of rough. So I guess they had to go to the school and slap a couple people around. And Estelle said nobody ever said a word to her after that. So I don't know. I thought that was great. You got to protect your own, I guess, you know. Your people, even if they're not your biological family, you have to take care of your people. That's all there is to it. Anyway, so yeah, it was good to hear about that. Let's get into today's story. Oh, first of all, health update. I did have a stroke. In case first time here, I had a stroke. A little mine. mini stroke. The only thing wrong is sometimes I lose my train of thought, so you see me do this occasionally. And then I have to get back on it, or I forget words. That kind of sucks. But no numbness, all my limbs are working fine. I'm doing great. As soon as the brain fog goes, I think I'll be 100%. Got the doctor bill. Woo! I'm gonna start driving Uber or something like that. Anyway, so let's talk about today's person that found America. This one was pretty interesting. I had done some work for a fabricating company, a big, large one in the Midwest. And they had a headquarters in Chicago. And they wanted me to do some like their HR videos, just, voiceover for those. Their HR videos and like some safety things. So I went there, did that. This back before I had a real setup. Now, if someone does that, I just record it in my office and I can send it off because I got waterproof. Let's hope it's waterproof. I have a soundproof room upstairs, semi-soundproof. I do hear that Harley that goes by every morning. I hear that. Anyway, so I take the train, again, my favorite mode of transportation, out to Chicago. I do the work. And the guy who's running it, he's like the company's trainer. He trains the new people and does all kinds of stuff. His name was Dennis. And after the work was done, we went out and got some dinner. I think it started off as lunch, ended up being dinner too. But Dennis takes me out to lunch at a place called the Congress Hotel. They had a place called the Lounge. It was nice. Had some drinks, started talking with dinner. And I told him about how, I just travel and I meet interesting people and their stories are amazing. I've always been a firm believer that the best stories you will ever hear in your life are from normal people, not from, movies and TV and books. All great. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big movie fan. I read books, all that stuff. But I think when you sit down and talk to someone and they tell you about their life, it's the best thing you can do. I mean, everyone's got a love story in their life. They've got some comedy. They've got some drama. They've got some action, and hopefully they don't have a horror story to tell you about. And that's where some of the best entertainment will ever come from, if you just talk to people. So Dennis starts telling me about his life. Dennis was the only son of a single mom. When mom was young, Dennis was 60 at this point, so some time back. Dennis's mom was a teenager working in an office. I think she was like 16 or 17. And she got pregnant. And the guy was older. I'm hoping that meant he was like 21 or something like that, not like some 50-year-old dude. But so the mom told the guy that she'd been fooling around with, so to speak, that she was pregnant. And she told Dennis when he got older that his response to her telling him that was so disgusting and wrong that she never talked to him again. Said she left his apartment or whatever it was. She never saw him again, never talked to him again. Never told him what happened, and never even told Dennis the guy's name. Dennis, I don't care. That's fine. I don't need to see the guy. Never needed to know him, anything like that. If he's going to act like that, I'm with my mom on that one. So his mom raises him, and I got to tell you, I forget her name, so I'm just going to call her his mom the whole time. His mom left they were in Pennsylvania. I think around Pittsburgh area, and they came down to Chicago. Apparently she had a friend there or something like that. So she went down to Chicago with her newborn baby, and she started a new life there. Well, she ended up in some kind of shelter for single moms, things like that, with her son, which eventually led to an apartment where most of the apartment building was in a bad situation like that. But it was cheap, and it was affordable, and it was in a area called Little Village. That's it, Little Village. Now it's a predominantly Mexican neighborhood, and it's called La Villita or something like that. So I don't know. So they moved to this neighborhood, and they got in this apartment, and they spent years there. He said spent all his teen years, most of his younger years there. He just remembers always living there. And they had friends there that had been there just as long, and there was an older woman named Annie who watched him when his mom was at work or whatever. Mom eventually goes to one of the Chicago universities. I'm not sure if it was the University of Chicago, but it was one of the universities there, and she got her degree and eventually worked not 30 years. She went to work till the day she died for like the county jail. Not sure what she was doing there, but he said she worked there the rest of her life. It was like the first real job she had after college, and that was it. Well, they lived in this apartment building, and his mom was big on education. Taught him things all the time. His mom taught him German. And at the same time, the woman downstairs who used to watch him was teaching him Spanish. So this guy grew up with no dad, single mom. They struggled. They're basically runaways from Pennsylvania. And he gets to high school and he speaks 2 languages already. Boom. His junior year of high school, now he said he was always top of the class, always A's. You know, there might be 1 or 2 students that were better than him. Goes all through elementary school, middle school, and into high school. The beginning of his junior year, his mom was diagnosed with cancer. Now, it's just him. He doesn't know his grandparents. He doesn't know his father. He has no siblings. Doesn't even know if he has cousins at this point. It's just him and his mom, and that's all it is. And Annie was basically, the older woman in the apartment building was his adopted grandmother, I guess you could say. Well, the mom's cancer progressed, and early in his senior year of high school, she passed away. And it was just him in an apartment. He's like 16 or 17 at the time. And the apartment was really good to him. They understood. They let him stay there, even though he wasn't 18. And this, back years ago, Dennis was 60 at the time, around 60. So the rules weren't always followed like they are today. Well, guys from the jail, some of the moms, and people that his mom knew, including he had gotten really close to one of his teachers. They had, like, from 6th grade, her and his mom had become friends. They all pulled their money together and paid for his rent through the summer after his senior year. So his rent was covered. And he decided he wasn't going to go to school anymore. He needed to start making money because he, knew the clock was ticking. He goes, I got to be able to make money so I can get my own apartment or keep this one. So he quit school and started working little part-time jobs and stuff like that, and not making much money, but he was able to survive. Now, he said, he goes, I was never one to, I forget the words he said. Oh my God, it was great. He wasn't good with the ladies. Even though he liked the ladies, he said, I wasn't really good at working with them or talking to them or dating them or anything like that. And so he said one day he gets a knock on his door, and it's a girl he'd gone to high school with that he was friendly with. He goes, no romantic relationship. They talked at lunch quite often, but nothing big. He goes, she might have been putting down signals, but I don't have the ability to pick up on women, when he said woman signals. So she showed up and asked him what was going on. She'd heard his mom had passed away, and she was trying to talk him to going back to school. And he basically said, I can't. I got to work, or I'm going to end up on the streets. I can't do high school. And maybe, he's always talked about maybe someday going back. Well, I guess she understood. She got a hold of her dad, or talked to her dad, and got him a job at his sheet metal company. And he was making twice as much as he was before, started working for the sheet metal company, and eventually started dating this woman, Kim. He called her Kimmy. So he starts dating Kimmy, and things were great. Kept the apartment, dating, has a girlfriend. Just his new family is treating him great. Her family, I should say. He said it was really weird because he'd only had dinner with him and his mom like 99% of the time. And go over to their house, and she's got like 3 brothers, a sister, and parents, and they all have this big dinner all the time. And I didn't know how to act. It was just so weird that these people all got together. They talked about their day, and they made jokes and stuff like that. And he goes, I had dinner with my mom every single day, and it was like, how was your day? Did you do anything fun at school? What do you got homework on? That was his conversations with his mom. He said she was a loving mom, but very much business first. And then he gets to his family, and they're just like big family parties and everything like that. It was great. He said it took a while to get used to it. And then he said it was just so awkward in the beginning. Anyway, a couple of years go by, and him and Kimmy are doing great. And I think he didn't exactly say what it was. He said he did something bad, and it just kind of ruined everything. And so they break up, he loses his job, and eventually he loses his apartment at like 20 years old. So now he's struggling to get a new job. Well, around that time, he starts working part-time, but the older woman, Annie, let him sleep in like on her couch or in a little spare room she had or something like that in her apartment. And he said it worked out because Annie was getting older and she had some health problems and she needed help, and he really needed a place to stay. He had a car and a couple $100 in the bank, he said. That's all he had. So he stayed with her, and then probably about 2 years after moving in with her, Annie passed away. And he held on to her apartment for a couple more months, and then, I guess he was the heir to all her stuff. She didn't have a family either, so he took all her stuff and, didn't know what to do with it, so he sold a lot of it and then just kind of put some in, the apartment and left the apartment one day, and that was it. He said he still had a lot of her photo albums to this day. Doesn't know what to do with them. She had no real family that he knew of. Anyway, so he get that brain thing again. So he ends up moving out of her apartment and got no place else to go, so he ends up living in his car underneath like a freeway overpass, and there's a little community of people living in their car back then, and he got to know them. And they were all older than him, and people that had hit rough times or whatever, and there was him. I was like mid-20s. They were all in their 40s and stuff. And they just talk at night and stuff. And he said he didn't know what he was going to do. He had no idea, and tell him the story and all that. And he happened to mention one day that he spoke 3 languages, English, German, and Spanish. And one of the women there said, "You should get a job at the courthouse. They always need interpreters." Never even thought that was a job. He had no idea. So he's all, "I should do that." And he found out they paid like triple what he was making already at like some lame job he had. But he didn't have a suit, didn't own a suit. He had t-shirts, pants, and tennis shoes. That was it. And he didn't want to blow it. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime chance. For his situation, this is definitely a step up. And he said he was afraid to go to the interview. He didn't have any clothes. Well, he was telling them that, and, he figured I'll keep working and eventually get a suit. That's a freaking coyote. What are they barking at? How long do you think coyotes do that for? I hope you guys can hear that. Things I have to deal with. Then why are they up this early? They should be asleep. I mean, they roam around the back pond all night. So he just figured he'd keep working, eventually get a suit, secondhand suit, whatever, go do this interview, fill out the application, but he didn't want to blow it, so he figured this is a month or 2 away. So 2 nights later, his friends had a suit for him. They had got a suit. These are all people living in their car, and they got him a suit and sent him off to his interview. He went to do that interview, and he got the job. So he went to his first real interview with a real job. What he figures was a stolen suit and borrowed shoes. So Dennis eventually gets the job at the courthouse and starts going to college. Gets his degree, education degree. I think it was only his bachelor's, but still, it's great. Considering what he'd been through, I think that's amazing. Most people would have checked out and just, gone and worked construction the rest of their life or something else that would just pay. So he finally gets his degree. He's working at the courthouse, and he decides he wants to go back and see his ex-girlfriend's dad and tell him he's sorry for how things went. And it always bugged him. It always tore at him that he'd blown this whole situation. And basically, I wish he would have told me what it does. I don't want to speculate what it was, but when you're young, you do stupid stuff. Anyway, he broke her heart. So he decides to go there, gets in his car after work one day, drives down to the sheet metal place, goes in the office door. There's the girl, Kimmy. She's working the front desk for him. And she was pleasant. Everything was nice, even though he goes, she had plenty of good reason to throw me out of the building, but she was nice. We started talking, explained to her what had happened with him, and she understood. And she kind of, you know, knew he was going through a lot in his life and kind of said it was okay. Well, they started talking again. Eventually, they started dating again. And eventually, they got married. So they got married after knowing each other for like 10 years. And they went on to have 3 kids, 3 or 4. I could be wrong on that. It might be 3 or 4. And at 60, he had had his second grandchild. He had just had it when I had met him that day, like a week earlier. I thought that was great. I mean, now he works for this company where he works the HR, and I bet he's retired. He was talking about retiring soon. But anyway, he does the HR and does the training and all that stuff for this big company. And he makes a good living. I think he makes a really good living. And things worked out for him. I just think it's funny that Dennis found his America in his own city in America. You know, he was living on another part. You know, his life was another part of Chicago. And he got to the other side. Even though he had tons of hurdles, and things that should have just collapsed him. I mean, most people would have been freaking collapsed and not done anything with their life. Just knowing what I know of his story, you don't recover from most of that stuff. But sometimes you pick yourself up and you're good to go. So yeah, that's Dennis. Dennis from Chicago. He'll probably see this, and I don't know if he'll give me an update or not, but I did ask him if I could put this on a podcast about a year or 2 ago, and he said, yeah, that's no problem. But here I am putting it on a video, so we'll see. But I don't think he's going to mind. If he does, Dennis, email me or call me. You got my number. All right, everyone. That's today's video. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I love doing these. We'll do another one next Sunday. Everybody have a great week.